Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Nate with Rats and Rods. Today I'm going to be going through a DIY section of the channel. I'm going to be walking y'all through how to do front and rear pads and rotors on a 2015 Mazda 3. And I'm going to be showing you guys that you don't need all those expensive tools and a lift. I apologize, the wind out here is pretty bad. Hopefully the mic will cover up some of the wind muff. But I'm showing you guys that you don't necessarily need all those expensive tools, a lift and all that stuff to get jobs done on your car. Some things are pretty simple, and just with a little bit of elbow grease and some know-how and follow instructions, man, anything's possible. You can get down. I'm just going to be using, you can see, I just brought some tools with me in a backpack here. I got my jack, my jack stands, floor jack, and some tools, just some simple stuff. I'm going to walk you guys through it, so stick along with the process, and if you like it, hit the subscribe button down on the right. We're going to have a lot of DIY videos, and soon we're going to be traveling to car shows and races and talking about cars and just diving right on into the car scene. So if you guys enjoy it, please follow, subscribe, and drop something in the comments and let me know what you think. So here we go. We're going to start it. Here we go, guys. We're going to start in the first part of this process. You got to find a good jack point underneath the car. So I'm going to walk you guys through that here in a second. Let me get my jack set up underneath the car, and I'll pinpoint what a good point is to jack it up, and that way you can make sure you're safe and you don't have a car following you, because that would be the absolute worst thing to happen. Do this at your own risk. I'm not going to claim any safety or anything for any of you guys. I'm going to walk you through step by step how I would do it and try to stay the safest as possible. So first we're going to find a jack point up here. You'll notice underneath the car, most of the time on the front, you'll have what's called a pinch weld. For your factory jack, you know, that comes with your spare tire, that has a little notch to where you can set it on. Fortunately enough, I have a floor jack that's big enough I don't have to use one of those, because those are extremely dangerous. But I'm going to get down here and I'll put up a jack point and I'll walk you guys through it. Now, before we get the car all the way jacked up, we are going to go ahead and take your breaker bar, 4-way lug wrench, and we're going to go ahead and break the lugs loose. That way we're not trying to wrench on it really hard with it up in the air, because that makes things a little dangerous. So now that we got our size right here, which is going to be a 21mm socket, we're going to go ahead and get our socket on there and know what the size is, right? 21. And I like to cheat a little bit. These floor jacks are great because they come with a bar. You use it as a little cheater bar. I'm using a 1/2-inch drive socket right here. That way I can really get some leverage on it without having to break my socket or ratchet or wrench or anything. Just going to get that on there, get you some good leverage. Go ahead and break that loose, right? Always go in a star pattern. That way you are loosening the lugs in an even pattern. The pressure is coming off of that wheel and that hub evenly, right? So we go ahead and break them all loose. Now that we broke them loose, we don't have to do the star pattern anymore. We got them all broke loose, right? So here we go. We got that done. Now we're going to go ahead and jack the car the rest of the way up, right? So we take it. We got our good jack point. All right. The jack's a little wore out. It's about time for a new one, but I think we can get through this job before it ain't got enough oomph to lift the car for me anymore. I've had this one for a few years. It's about time for a new one, right? All right. You got to make sure anytime you get underneath a car and you're working on a car, we're going to lift it up. And we're going to make sure we put a jack stand underneath it. Because you never trust a floor jack. Get up a little higher so we can drop it down on that floor jack and it'll support the weight of the vehicle. Alright, now that we got it up there, we're not going to let all the weight off of the jack, but just a little bit to where it's supported from the floor jack as well as the jack stand, right? So now we got that, we're going to go ahead and remove the tire. All right, now we're going to go to the next part of the process and explain to why might you actually need to replace the rotors. Obviously brake pads, you know, they start squeaking, your braking power starts to deteriorate a little bit. So we're going to go through and explain why you might actually need rotors. So I'm going to flip the camera around here. If you look at this rotor right here, and you can feel it more than you can see it, in this there's texture, and you rub your fingernail around it, right? There's grooves. Now a lot of the times you can actually get your rotors turned by taking it to a shop that does rotor turning, right? And they can grind off a smooth edge to it and make sure that it's resurfaced and refinished flat. But in this case, there's nowhere really close by that we can get the rotors turned and resurfaced. So it was just cheap enough to go ahead and buy a new set of them from your closest auto parts store. Now again, like I stated previously in the intro of this video, you don't need all those expensive tools. I came out here with very minimal stuff, a backpack full of some sockets, wrenches, you know, just common sizes on, you know, you would say a JDM car or a Japanese car, domestic market car, right? So I just brought a bag full of sockets, you know, and wrenches and stuff that I thought I would need. So you can go to any auto parts store and grab up a set of tools for 30-40 bucks with your common ratchet, your socket sizes, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, and an 1/8 inch drive or 3/8 drive, you know, and you can work from there. All right, so now we got our size. We know on the back side of our caliper, to take the caliper off on this 2015 Mazda 3, it's actually a 13mm socket. So we're going to go ahead and break those loose right quick. Normally they're not tight. Generally they, you don't want to over tighten them because then they'll seize up and it'll be hard to get them off for the next person changing brakes, right? So go ahead and bust these loose. Got a little bit too tight to be getting it off with my fingers. Right, sometimes the back side of them spins, so you might have to get another wrench in there, or you know, some channel locks, just something to grab it, stabilize it so you can get that bolt loose. Let's go ahead and take that out. Alright, now that we got the caliper bolts loose, we're going to go ahead and take this caliper off. Now, so that there's no added wear on your brake lines, you want to make sure you can go ahead and secure that some type of way. So what we're going to do is, I have actually a lanyard for a hard hat from my day job. We're going to take and we're going to hook that up right here, see? So now that brake caliper is not going to fall, and we know it's not going to fall down and do any damage to our brake lines right here, because that would just be awful if you're driving down the road and there was a crack in your brake line and you lose fluid, you lose pressure, and then you lose brake power, and that would be dangerous. We don't want you to get in a wreck. So make sure that's a very important part, to make sure that you keep your brake caliper up and not putting any strain on the brakes. So now we're going to remove these pads, right? It should be pretty easy. Sometimes if they're a little hard to get out, you can go ahead and put a little screwdriver behind it, give it a little pull, right? I'm going to go ahead and leave those clips in for now. So the next step of the process is we're going to actually look at the caliper mounting bracket on the back, and we're going to look for the size of that. And I think it's going to be, let's see, if I was to be a guessing man, I would say it's going to be a 17, and then wow, I was right, 17 it is. So those caliper mounting bracket bolts on the back side are going to be a 17mm bolt. Now generally these are going to be on there pretty tight, so you're going to want to give it a little oomph to get it off, right? So go ahead and get that off. Make sure you don't knock your caliper off, right? And make sure you put all your bolts and nuts and all your stuff like lug nuts in one spot, so you know where you get to them. It's the worst thing you could do is kick one of your nuts and bolts around and then you spend 30 minutes looking for it because you kicked it across the yard. Or especially if you're working in gravel, a nut, bolt, or screw is really, really hard to find in a gravel parking lot or a gravel situation, right? So let's move this caliper out of the way so I don't beat on it with my wrench, with my ratchet. All right. On this particular one right here, it's pretty close. Don't have a lot of room, so we're going to use a little extension. I think it's a 4-inch extension, so we can get in here and get some leverage. Now we can actually get on that bolt, right? And this is one of those situations where I'm going to use a cheater bar, because like I said, we don't have all these expensive tools, and we're just doing this in a driveway, right? So take your cheater bar, get on there, right? So we get a little extra leverage. Okay. Lift it that way. All right, so now we broke it loose. Now you should be able to do it with your hands. All right. Go ahead and take that the rest of the way out with your hands. So now you can see we've got our caliper mounting bracket off. Just go ahead and set that to the side, right where you're putting all the rest of your nuts and bolts. And this Tennessee heat's already coming in pretty quick this year. Rain's flowing through, it's a little muggy. I think we're at like 91% humidity for the day. So it's pretty rough already, huh? So, you're gonna look down here. Sometimes they have screws holding it on, right? No screws on this particular one, so we're gonna have to do a little whooping, persuasion to get this one off. All right, I don't have a deadbolt hammer with me, so I'm just using the part of another jack stand. Sometimes you gotta use what you have. So we'll go ahead and pull that rotor all the way off. All right, there we go. We got the rotor off. Inside's a little worse than the outside. It's got some pretty good grooves there. These rotors would have been okay to take and turn them at a shop if there was one close by that would resurface them. But again, with a lifetime warranty, when we bought the new ones, there was no reason to just go ahead and buy the new ones. I think they were $60, $62 a piece. All right. So as you can see at this part of the process, we have our new rotor. So we're going to take this rotor, they're shipped in a plastic bag, and inside that plastic bag, they come pre-coated with a little bit of oil on them, so that in shipping and due time, if they're in a truck, semi-truck or whatnot, they're not going to rust. That's why they're coated with a little oil. But it is very, very important that we take and we spray them off with brake cleaner to get some of that oil off, right? And we're going to do this again after we install it to make sure no oil from my fingers comes off on this caliper, or the rotor, I'm sorry. So we're going to go ahead and mount that up, get that lined up really good. Okay, that's awesome. Fits good. So now we're just going to repeat everything in reverse and put the caliper bracket mounting back on. So we'll take and we'll line that up. Bolts. Remember, these are the 17mm large ones. Get those started by hand. All right. Awesome. So we're gonna go back around. All right, so at this point, we're just gonna go ahead. We're gonna tighten them up pretty good. The ratchet. Now on every car there is something called torque specs, and things are supposed to be torqued to spec. Unfortunately, I did not bring a torque wrench with me today, which is not the right answer by any means. However, when it comes to caliper mounting bracket, you cannot over tighten them. Yeah, the tighter the better when it comes to this particular situation, because you don't want that caliper wiggling loose. So we're going to tighten it with a cheater bar. Get it on here, right? Get as tight as we can with this cheater bar. Ooh. All right, that one's good and tight. Let's go ahead and do the top. And this was the one we needed the extension on because the lower strut mount for the coilover, the bolt is in the way. So we're going to use this extension. That way we're not in a bind and getting it on anything. Alright. It's already got pretty tight by hand, so we're going to take it. Going to get a cheater bar on it. Alright. Too much adjustment. The air tools, impacts, power tools, they definitely make the job easier, but it's not a requirement. You can get everything done with just a cheap set of tools you get at any of your local parts stores. Alright, it's on there good and tight. Oh, it's warm. It's warm. It's gonna be a warm summer at Rat and Rod Custom Shop. That is for sure. Air conditioner coming soon. Alright, so now we're gonna go ahead and go grab our pads. Bear with me one moment. I'm gonna go get them and we'll get everything lined up. Alright, so we're going on to the next step here. So the next step of this process, we're going to compress the caliper piston so that we can make room for our new brake pads to go in, because obviously they're a different size than the old ones. Alright, so by doing that, we're going to take, you see how this piston here, it's got a rubber seal on the inside. Now this is not a requirement, this is just an extra step that I like to do. You take some caliper grease. It's always good, every moving part in your brakes, it's good to add some grease to it so that it gives us some longevity and the rubber can continue to have its resiliency and just continue to be rubber, right? So I'm going to rub some of that inside this boot right here. Make sure it's got some good lubrication so that when we compress it. Now, it's important to remember that this grease cannot go on the stopping surface of your brake pad. It needs to go on rubber and the outside. Any part that touches the rotor needs to be clean, very clean. No grease, no oil. That's very important because that will cause squeaks and that will cause issues later down the road. So now that we have that done, we're going to take one of the old pads. We're going to place the old pad up against it in the manner in which it would ride against the brakes. And you take a large C-clamp. We're going to take and we're going to loosen our C-clamp up. Alright. Find a good part to put it on where it's not going to put anything in a bind. I think we can put it on the back side right here, right on the banjo bolt. It's not normally recommended. You normally want a flat surface, but these brakes are in relatively good shape. I don't think it's going to seize up at all. So we're going to take and we're going to squeeze that down. And as you do that, it compresses the piston back into the caliper. Now these are single piston calipers, meaning there's only one piston that pushes up against the brake pad, which gives it a little less pressure to push in and to compress. So now that we've got that all compressed and we put that back together, you see we've cleared up room now, so now it's flat. So again, before we continue on to the next step, we're going to take some brake cleaner. We're going to clean off this area right here that I may have touched with my hands. Alright, we'll try to get in here. Just any good spot, you know. Any spot you feel like you may have touched and got grease. Alright, so our new pads are, where did I put them? Oh, here they are. Alright, so we're going to take our new pads. Unfortunately, these pads didn't come with new clips, retaining clips. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It just depends on the brand of clips that you get, or brand pad you get. You know, sometimes you get what you pay for. The more you pay, the better product you get sometimes, and the more accessories. Now, it's not absolutely necessary to change the clips every time you change the brakes. However, if it appears that there's wear on them, or that they're bent or rusted really bad, it might be a good idea to change them out. And you can purchase them separately, but also, like I said, sometimes they come with them, sometimes they don't. Now, you need to try as much as possible not to touch this side of the brake pad, right? This side right here is okay, but this side's actually is what your stopping power is. So what we're gonna do before we ever even install these brakes, you got your plungers right here. We're gonna take and actually squeeze a little bit of grease inside of our caliper mounting bolts right here, the moving parts. And so it's got a little grease in it, so it can free move. Perfect. That'll also keep those from getting seized up later down the road. All right, so I'm gonna put that aside. Clean my finger off because I don't want to get any on my finger. All right, and now we're gonna take these pads, right? And we're gonna put a little caliper grease on the back side of these pads. And we're gonna smooth it out real good. That just gives anything working surface. So smooth it out, swirl it around there. Just get it on the metal part to where it's gonna be touched or compressed. All right, we have that linked up, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna drop that pad in. And it'll go in just like the old one came out. Gonna slide in, right? And unfortunately, AutoZone gave me the wrong pads. Of course. Right, so unfortunately, the parts house gave me the wrong pads for the front. So bear with me, I gotta make a quick trip back to the parts house, exchange these and get the right ones, and then we'll walk you back through the process and the steps of getting that all hooked up, putting the pads, the grease calipers back together, getting the front brakes done, and then we'll move on to the back. All right guys, well, we're back from the parts house, and I got the right size pads this time. So we're gonna go through the process. I'm gonna re-walk you through how to grease the pads and put them in, and we'll just walk you through the process again. So here goes. All right, guys. So here we are again. We got the pads. We've already previously walked you through greasing the calipers and compressing the calipers back in so that we don't have any issues with the rubber seals inside of the piston. So now we're gonna take these pads again. I'll reiterate, don't touch the part that touches the rotor. So we're going to take these, we've already compressed them with our C-clamp by putting them in here, pushing back on them, compressing it, making room for the new ones. So we're going to take, and do this one more time, we're going to take our caliper grease, and we're going to put it on the back side of this pad, make sure to be on the back side. I'm going to take a little caliper grease, we're going to put it on here. Alright, smooth it out real good. Just get it on the metal surface, the part that's going to be squeezed on by the caliper itself. And we got that good and lubed up a little bit. Alright. And it's super humid out here today. Alright, so we're going to slide that in here. That being said, go ahead and set this piece in. Perfect. All right. Got the outside done. So now we're going to take the inside. Now the inside, you'll notice, has a little metal piece. This metal piece, it's called a bunch of different names, but I've always called it the squealer. It's going to let you know when your brakes are getting too low that it's time to change them, because that metal's going to start rubbing on your rotor and it's going to squeak and make loud, terrifyingly hair on the back of your neck stand up noise, and that's when you know, hey, it's time to probably do some brake pads on this mug, right? Go ahead and put that in, just like we did the outside. Slide that on in, get it seated real good. Make sure you pinch it. That's a good seat right there. All right, and then we're just going to go in reverse order of tearing it apart, put it back together. So we'll slide that piston on there. Go ahead and grab our caliper bolts. Ooh, go ahead and get that finger tight. We start the top one. Let's do the top one first. I do anyways. That way it gives you something to kind of pivot on and hold it in place. That way you can adjust it and move it if you need to get the bottom one on. All right, so now that we got that done, we can take our socket and get it in there as tight as we can by hand. All right. Take and tighten it up with the wrench. Now, These don't have to be terribly tight. Forgive me for not having the proper torque specs in a torque wrench. But you do not want to over tighten these. You just want to get them pretty snug. Get them snug and then give them a little extra. Right? Snug and then a little extra oomph. So now that we've got that all done, we're going to take one last time. See how this grease. We're going to clean that grease off real good with our brake cleaner, right? Knock some of that stuff off. Clean some of the rest of this off. All right, cool. So now we're ready to reinstall the tire. Let's take some of our old stuff, clean up our mess here, because we got a little bit of a pile of stuff going on. Our old pads out of the way. All right. Now, lift the tire up, get it back on the hub. This part's very important. As you're putting it back on, you want to make very sure that the wheel is mounted straight and secure to the hub. So make sure it's tight. So I'm always going to put it up there tight. And first and foremost, I'm going to do one of the top lug nuts. Do the top one, get it hand snug. Right, and then we're going to do one directly below it in a diamond or a star pattern. We're going to go below it, get it as tight as possible with our hand. We're going to take and just crank it down a little bit. That way I know it's setting good on the hub. So now we have it on there, right? So we're going to continue to put the rest of our lug nuts on. And I'm just going to continue, because it's good practice, to go ahead and go in that star pattern that I was talking about earlier. Because in doing that, you're ensuring that the wheel is being tightened down in an even manner as it goes around, as you go around all of your lug nuts. All right, so we got this one, got one more. Go ahead and put these on hand tight. And from that, I'm just going to go back with my ratchet in a star pattern. Make sure they're all kind of snug pretty good. All right. Alright guys, again I apologize for the rain or the wind. There's a storm coming in. I was actually wrong about these back calipers. You actually have to screw this one in. This isn't one that you can compress with a C-clamp. And they make a special tool for it. However, I didn't know that these brakes are set up like this prior to jumping into this journey. So you're just going to grab hold of those little teeth. And I'm sure there's a better tool to use for this. But we're going to thread this in. Again, this is just a DIY that you can use with parts you have or tools you have laying around the house. So we're actually going to twist that in until we get it to a point that our new pads will fit. And then as you give it brake, it will tighten itself up in time. The more you give it brake, it will actually thread itself out with the pressure of the brake pushing on it. So we're going to continue to thread that, screw that in. Just like a regular bolt, righty tighty, lefty loosey. But you want to be very sure, if you're doing it like I'm doing right now, to watch out for this rubber boot. You don't want to tear that rubber boot. This one's in pretty good shape, so we're going to continue to keep it in good shape, right? So, oh, I pinched my finger. Ay, ay, ay. All right, guys. After you twist this in, just like righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, you're going to twist it in while pushing pressure. It compresses it and pushes the caliper in. As you can see, I've already greased the pads and fitted them where they need to go. It's been a little bit of a challenge working today because apparently AutoZone doesn't know how to give the right parts. So, it's been an uphill battle. But we got it all put together now, so now I think we're good to go. So we're just going to reassemble it, same way, put together, attempt to anyways. don't know if you guys can tell, but I've gotten a little frustrated with my parts vendor today. AutoZone has extremely pissed me off. I don't think I'm going to be doing business with them anymore. No, I'm just kidding. I love AutoZone. Those guys are my favorite. People make mistakes. That's a part of it, guys. People are going to make mistakes. It gets frustrating at times, but it's part of the process, you know? So now we're just going to tighten these caliper bolts back down just the way we took them off. So this inner bolt's going to spin on me, so I'm going to take a pair of channel locks. I'm going to wrap it in here just to keep your inner bolts from spinning. Sweet. You know, we get it that way, we tighten down. Same on the bottom. Take an extension because I kind of got some stuff in the way here. I think we can. Now we're going to reset the parking brake. Parking brake lever back in. That's locked down. Cool. So now we're going to spray some brake cleaner on, get the grease off of it. Because they're all trouble, I've made a mess. You get all those greasy parts out, right? Double check, make sure everything's tight. Make sure it is. Break a couple times. Let's proceed. Free floating hub. So now, I'm going to put the tire back on in reverse order. Alright guys, that about wraps it up for my DIY of the day on this 2015 Mazda 3 front and back rotors. I'm going to go ahead and knock out the other side, but the other side is 100% identical to this one, just in reverse order. So all you really got to do the same thing, same steps, front to back, and just on the other side. So everything's going to be in reverse. Now I will say, this was a little bit different from most front and rear brake setups. Most of the time you're not going to have a caliper in the rear where it's a twist to release the pressure off of it. Most of the time it's just going to be to where you can compress it. I'm not going to lie, that threw me a little bit of a curveball. I wasn't expecting that, but that happens sometimes when you're working on cars. You got to be able to handle the unexpected and roll with it. Fortunately, I was able to engineer some tools that I needed to make the job work, because I didn't have the proper tool with me today. I was able to use a long set of needle nose pliers to push pressure in on that rear caliper and push it in as you twisted it clockwise to tighten it. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. This channel's new. It's going to come out. We're going to do a lot of DIY videos as well as interviews and talking about cool cars. Pretty soon I'm going to Colorado on the 29th of this month. We're going out to the Grid Fest. I'm going to be going to Pikes Peak, doing a lot of interviews, going around, hopefully run into some of the inspirational channels that I've been watching to get on this journey. And you guys, y'all support is what's really going to drive this. This is my dream, and I'm going to keep moving forward with it. If you guys have any suggestions, if y'all have any questions, or if there's anything you'd like me to do a DIY of, if I encounter that car or something similar to that, I promise that I will put a video up so that I can explain to you guys how to do it, the proper way to do it. Just remember, guys, if you're going to work on cars, please, please, please always make sure that you're being safe. Safety is the main key. I don't want to hear about any of you guys getting hurt, man, because anybody in the car scene or in the automotive scene, you guys are my family and I love you all. I don't want to hear or see of anybody getting hurt, and unfortunately it can happen. So make sure you're always double checking, look twice, make sure you're always supported on a vehicle with jack stands. You're not making unnecessary movements with it jacked up. And most of the time, try to have a buddy out there watching or a buddy with you helping. A lot of people will really like to jump in and help and learn. I have a lot of friends that want to learn how to work on cars. Hence is why I'm coming out with this channel. So please hit the subscribe button. I'm going to try to give you as many DIY videos in a week as I can, because this is what I do for a living. I work on people's cars. And pretty soon we're going to have a build series. We're going to start a 68 Camaro SS, big block blower, burn up in a fire, and we're going to start the rebuild process, starting with tubbing the rear end and putting some big wide Hoosiers on it. So with all else said, man, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank y'all support. Pretty soon we're gonna have some merch coming out. RnR Customs, Rods. It's coming out. We're gonna have t-shirts, hats, stickers, Instagram coming soon. So if you guys have any suggestions, have any questions, or just anything you got to say, man, please drop in the comments below and let me know what you guys think. Thank you all. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for your time and watching today. Love you guys. Peace.